They say blood is thicker than water, but apparently it's not thicker than greed. My sister learned that the hard way when she discovered that the quiet little programmer she'd been stealing from for years had enough money to buy her entire company out from under her. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss.
My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for most of my life, I was the invisible one. While my older sister, Jessica, was collecting homecoming crowns and debate team trophies, I was in my bedroom at age 12, teaching myself Python programming from library books. Our parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, ran a successful accounting firm in suburban Denver, Colorado. They understood spreadsheets and tax codes, but when I tried to explain algorithms or data structures, their eyes would glaze over like I was speaking ancient Greek. Jessica, on the other hand, had mastered the art of being heard. She was the golden child, 3 years older, with perfectly straight blonde hair that she spent an hour styling every morning, and a smile that could convince anyone of anything. She was student body president, captain of the volleyball team, and had this uncanny ability to walk into any room and immediately become its center of gravity. People just naturally gravitated toward her confidence, her ease with words, her way of making everything sound more important when she said it. I was the opposite in every way. Dark brown hair that I kept in a perpetual ponytail, thick-rimmed glasses that I'd worn since 3rd grade, and a wardrobe consisting entirely of hoodies and jeans. While Jessica was at parties or student government meetings, I was hunched over my ancient desktop computer, lost in lines of code that felt more like poetry to me than the actual poetry they made us analyze in English class. The thing about being the family's designated tech person is that everyone assumes your skills are just a quirky hobby, like collecting stamps or building model airplanes. When our home Wi-Fi went down, they'd call me. When Dad's laptop started running slowly, it was my job to fix it. When Mom needed help setting up her new smartphone, she'd find me in my room and stand over my shoulder while I configured her email, asking if I was sure I knew what I was doing. But they never saw it as a real skill. Not like Jessica's ability to give presentations or organize events or charm potential clients at Dad's business dinners. Those were talents that translated to the real world, they thought. Programming was just something I did to keep myself busy. Our house reflected this dynamic perfectly. Jessica's room was on the 2nd floor, with 2 large windows facing the front yard and enough space for a queen-size bed, a vanity table, and a sitting area where she'd hold court with her friends. My room was in the basement, next to the furnace and Dad's workshop. It was cooler down there, which was actually perfect for my computers, and the concrete walls kept the noise from my mechanical keyboard from bothering anyone upstairs. I'd turned that basement room into my sanctuary. 3 monitors mounted on adjustable arms, a custom-built PC that I'd assembled from components I'd saved up for over 2 years, and shelves lined with programming books, technical manuals, and the occasional science fiction novel. The walls were covered with printouts of code snippets I was proud of, flowcharts for applications I was building, and sticky notes with reminders about bugs I needed to fix. My parents rarely came down there. Maybe once a month, Mom would appear at the top of the stairs and call down to remind me about dinner or to ask if I needed anything from the grocery store. Dad would venture down when he needed something from his workshop, but he'd always move quickly through my space, like he was afraid of accidentally breaking something he didn't understand. But Jessica, though, she'd come down sometimes, usually when she needed something. It started small. In high school, she'd appear at my desk with her laptop, claiming her PowerPoint presentation had mysteriously corrupted itself the night before it was due. Could I possibly work some magic and recover it? Or she'd need help setting up a website for some club she was in. Just something simple, she'd say, batting her eyelashes like she was asking me to tie her shoes. I always said yes. Not because I was naive about what she was doing, but because those moments were the only time she seemed to actually see me as useful. For 20 minutes or an hour, I wasn't just her weird little sister who lived in the basement. I was someone who could solve problems she couldn't handle herself. The pattern continued through college. Jessica went to University of Colorado Boulder on a partial scholarship for volleyball and academics, studying business administration with a minor in communications. She'd call me at least once a week from her dorm room, usually in a panic about some technical requirement for a class. Could I help her create a database for her marketing project? Could I build a simple inventory system for her entrepreneurship assignment? Could I write a script to analyze survey data for her statistics class? I was at Colorado School of Mines, an hour away, buried in a computer science program that was kicking my ass in the best way possible. I was learning advanced algorithms, studying machine learning before it became a buzzword, diving deep into cybersecurity protocols and distributed systems. My professors were brilliant, demanding perfection in every line of code, pushing us to think not just about making programs work, but making them elegant, efficient, scalable. But I'd still drop everything when Jessica called. I'd stay up until 3 in the morning debugging her assignments, walking her through concepts over the phone, sometimes even driving to Boulder to sit in her dorm room and fix whatever crisis had erupted. Her roommates would gush about how lucky she was to have such a smart sister. And Jessica would flash that perfect smile and say something like, "Oh, Sarah's a genius with computers. She makes it look so easy." She never mentioned that I was doing the actual work. After graduation, Jessica moved back to Denver and got a job at a marketing firm downtown. She was good at it, naturally. She could pitch ideas with confidence, manage client relationships with charm, and navigate office politics like she'd been born for it. Within 2 years, she was promoted to account manager. Within 4, she was leading her own team. I took a different path. Instead of jumping into a corporate job, I spent 6 months building my own software company. Not a startup with venture capital and flashy offices, but a one-person operation running out of a small apartment in Capitol Hill. I specialized in custom business solutions, the kind of unglamorous back-end work that keeps companies running but never gets featured in TechCrunch articles. My clients were small businesses that needed inventory management systems, nonprofits that wanted donor databases, local restaurants that needed online ordering platforms. Nothing revolutionary, but solid, reliable work that paid well and let me set my own schedule. I wasn't changing the world, but I was solving real problems for real people, and I was good at it. Jessica, meanwhile, had started talking about entrepreneurship. She'd come over for Sunday dinners at our parents' house and regale everyone with stories about the latest business book she'd read or some podcast interview with a successful CEO. She had ideas, she said, big ideas about disrupting traditional industries and creating value for underserved markets. The problem was her ideas were always vague. She'd talk about leveraging technology to optimize customer experiences or building scalable platforms for sustainable growth. But when pressed for specifics, she'd wave her hand dismissively and say the details weren't important yet. The vision was what mattered. The execution could be figured out later. Our parents ate it up. Dad would lean forward at the dinner table asking thoughtful questions about market research and funding strategies. Mom would beam with pride, telling her friends about Jessica's entrepreneurial ambitions. They'd sometimes glance in my direction and ask how my computer work was going, but it was clear they saw it as a hobby that had gotten out of hand rather than a legitimate business. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica was the one with the business degree, the corporate experience, the natural charisma that investors supposedly loved. But I was the one who actually understood how to build the technology that modern businesses depended on. I was the one who could look at a company's workflow and see exactly where software could eliminate inefficiencies, reduce costs, and improve outcomes. But I kept that observation to myself. I'd learned early that pointing out contradictions in family dynamics was a good way to get labeled as difficult or jealous. It was easier to smile and nod when Jessica talked about her plans, to answer technical questions when she asked them, and to retreat back to my basement workspace where I could focus on building things that actually worked. I should have seen what was coming. The signs were all there, written in every homework assignment I'd completed for her, every late-night phone call where she'd picked my brain about some technical concept she needed to understand for a meeting. Jessica had never learned to build anything herself because she'd never had to. She'd always had me. But I was so focused on my own work, so comfortable in my role as the family's invisible problem solver, that I missed the most important detail of all. Jessica wasn't just borrowing my technical knowledge anymore. She was studying it, learning it, preparing to claim it as her own. The basement that had been my sanctuary for so many years was about to become the launching pad for my sister's greatest performance yet. And I was going to have a front row seat to watch her steal not just my work, but my entire future. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March, just as I was finishing up a particularly complex database optimization for a chain of auto repair shops. Jessica's voice had that breathless quality it got when she was excited about something, the kind of energy that used to make me drop everything and pay attention. "I need to see you, like today. Can you come over to my apartment?" I glanced at my monitors, where lines of SQL queries were still running their final tests. "I'm kind of in the middle of something. Can we talk tonight?" "No, this can't wait. I have something incredible to show you, and I think it could change both our lives." That phrase should have been my first warning. Jessica had a habit of describing every new opportunity as life-changing, from multi-level marketing schemes to cryptocurrency investments that never panned out. But there was something different in her voice this time, a focus I hadn't heard before. I saved my work and drove across town to her upscale apartment in Cherry Creek, a place she could afford thanks to her marketing job and what I suspect was some financial help from our parents. The building had a doorman and marble floors in the lobby, the kind of place that screamed success to anyone walking through it. Jessica opened her apartment door wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun that somehow looked deliberately styled. She practically bounced as she led me to her dining room table, which was covered with printouts, notebooks, and her open laptop. "Okay, sit down. I'm about to blow your mind." She launched into what she called her vision presentation, complete with hand gestures and the kind of confident eye contact she'd perfected in business school. She'd been working at the marketing firm for 5 years now, she explained, and she'd identified a massive gap in the market that no one was addressing properly.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Small and medium-sized businesses are drowning in inefficiency, she said, pacing around the table like she was presenting to a boardroom. They're using outdated systems, manual processes, disconnected software that doesn't talk to each other. They're losing money every single day because they don't have access to the kind of integrated solutions that big corporations take for granted. I nodded along, because she wasn't wrong. This was exactly the kind of problem I'd been solving for individual clients, one custom solution at a time. But here's the thing, Jessica continued, her eyes lighting up. The existing solutions are either too expensive or too complicated for these businesses to implement. They need something that's powerful but simple, comprehensive but affordable, scalable but user-friendly. She pulled out a thick folder and spread several sheets across the table. They were market research reports, competitor analyses, and what looked like financial projections. I was impressed despite myself. This wasn't the usual vague enthusiasm I was used to hearing from Jessica. She'd done actual homework. "I've been studying this space for months," she said. "I know exactly who the target customers are, what they're willing to pay, how to reach them. I have connections at dozens of small businesses through my work at the agency. I understand their pain points better than any tech company that's trying to solve this from the outside." She sat down across from me, leaning forward with the intensity I remembered from when she used to convince our parents to let her stay out past curfew. "Sarah, I want to start a company, a real company, not just a side hustle. I want to build the platform that finally solves this problem for small businesses everywhere." My heart started beating a little faster, not because I was excited, but because I could see where this was heading. Jessica had identified a real market opportunity, done legitimate research, and developed what sounded like a solid business strategy. But she was missing the one crucial element that would make any of it possible. "That sounds amazing,"
I said carefully. But building that kind of integrated platform would require some serious technical expertise. Have you thought about how you'd actually develop the software? Jessica's smile widened, and for a moment, she looked exactly like she had when we were kids, and she was about to talk me into doing her chores for her. That's where you come in. She pulled out another folder, this one filled with hand-drawn diagrams and flowcharts. They showed interconnected systems for inventory management, customer relationship management, financial tracking, and employee scheduling, all feeding into a central dashboard that would give business owners real-time insights into their operations. "I'd been thinking about this for months," she said. "What if we combined your technical genius with my business knowledge? You could build the platform, and I could handle everything else. The marketing, the sales, the customer relationships, the funding. We'd be unstoppable." I stared at the diagrams, and I have to admit they were impressive. Not just because the concept was sound, but because Jessica had spent time thinking through the technical requirements. The flowcharts showed understanding of how different business systems needed to integrate, what kind of data flows would be required, where the bottlenecks would likely occur. "Did you draw all of these yourself?" I asked. "Every single one. I've been staying up late for weeks researching how different business software works, studying integration challenges, trying to understand the technical side well enough to communicate with developers." She paused, then looked directly at me. But I realized I don't want to communicate with some random developers. I want to work with the best programmer I know. I want to work with you. There it was, the moment I'd unconsciously waited for my entire life. Jessica, the golden child, who'd always effortlessly succeeded at everything, was asking for my help with something that mattered. Not a homework assignment or a quick technical fix, but a real partnership where my skills would be essential to the success of something she cared deeply about. "We'd be equal partners," she continued. 50-50 split on everything. I handle the business side, you handle the technical side. We both use our strengths to build something neither of us could create alone. I picked up one of her diagrams, studying the way she'd mapped out the user interface flow. It was surprisingly sophisticated, showing a deep understanding of how non-technical users would want to interact with complex business data. "This is really good work, Jess. I'm impressed." "So you'll do it?" I should have said I needed time to think about it. I should have asked to see a formal business plan, discussed intellectual property agreements, insisted on legal documentation that would protect both of us. But sitting there at her dining room table, looking at months of research and planning that she'd done entirely on her own, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. I felt like Jessica actually saw me as an equal. "Yeah," I said. "Let's do it."
Jessica jumped up and hugged me, and for a moment we were just two sisters excited about building something together. She opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving for a special occasion, and we spent the next 3 hours going through every detail of her business plan. She'd already chosen a name, Streamline Core. She'd researched domain availability, trademark requirements, and business registration procedures. She'd identified our first 10 potential customers and had preliminary conversations with 3 of them about their specific needs. She'd even started putting together financial projections based on conservative estimates of customer acquisition and retention. "I want us to start small," she explained. "Build the core platform first, get our first few customers, prove the concept works. Then we can scale up, add features, maybe even bring in additional funding if we need it." She showed me a timeline sheet created, mapping out development milestones, customer onboarding phases, and revenue targets for the first 2 years. It was the kind of thorough planning I'd never bothered with for my own freelance work, and it made me realize how much more we could accomplish together than I'd ever achieved on my own. "The best part," Jessica said, refilling our wine glasses, "is that we both bring something essential to this. You're the technical genius who can actually build what we're envisioning. I'm the business strategist who can turn it into a profitable company. Neither of us could do this alone, but together we can create something incredible."
As the evening went on, I found myself getting genuinely excited about the project. The technical challenges would be significant but not insurmountable. I'd need to design a modular architecture that could handle multiple business functions while maintaining data integrity across different systems. I'd need to build user interfaces that were intuitive enough for busy business owners, but powerful enough to handle complex operations. I'd need to implement security protocols that would protect sensitive business data while allowing seamless integration with existing tools. It was exactly the kind of comprehensive project I'd been hoping to tackle, the kind of work that would push my skills to the next level and create something genuinely useful for hundreds or thousands of businesses. I can start working on the technical specifications this week, I told Jessica as I was getting ready to leave. If I focus on this full time, I think I could have a working prototype within 6 months. That's perfect, she said. I'll handle the business registration, set up our initial funding structure, and start reaching out to potential customers for more detailed requirements gathering. We shook hands at her door, and I drove home feeling more optimistic about the future than I had in years. For the first time, Jessica and I were going to be true partners, combining our different strengths to build something that neither of us could create alone. I spent that night in my basement workspace sketching out preliminary system architectures and making notes about the technical challenges we would need to solve. I was already mentally organizing my existing client work, figuring out how to wrap up current projects so I could dedicate my full attention to Streamline Core. I had no idea that Jessica was upstairs in her apartment updating her business plan with one crucial change. In every document, every projection, every piece of planning she'd shown me, there had been placeholder text that read, Technical Co-Founder TBD. That night, she changed it to Technical Co-Founder Jessica Mitchell. My name appeared nowhere in the updated documents. The first 3 months were a blur of 18-hour days and pure creative flow. I had converted my entire basement into a development war room, with whiteboards covering every wall and sticky notes color-coded by priority level. The Streamline Core platform was coming together beautifully, each module clicking into place like pieces of an intricate puzzle I'd been born to solve. Jessica stopped by every few days to check on progress, always bringing coffee and genuine enthusiasm for whatever breakthrough I had achieved since her last visit. She'd ask intelligent questions about the architecture, take detailed notes about user interface decisions, and offer suggestions based on feedback she was getting from potential customers. The inventory management module is incredible, she said during one of these visits, watching me demonstrate how the system could automatically reorder supplies when stock levels hit predetermined thresholds. But what if we added predictive analytics? Like, what if the system could learn seasonal patterns and adjust reorder timing based on historical data? I looked up from my keyboard, impressed. That's actually a brilliant idea. It would require some machine learning algorithms, but I could build a pattern recognition system that tracks sales velocity over time. Exactly. See, this is why we work so well together. You understand how to build it. I understand how businesses would actually use it. These conversations felt like the collaboration I'd always dreamed of having. Jessica wasn't just nodding along politely while I explained technical concepts. She was genuinely engaged, asking follow-up questions and proposing features that would make the platform more valuable for end users.
By month 4, I had a fully functional prototype that could handle inventory management, customer relationship tracking, basic financial reporting, and employee scheduling. The user interface was clean and intuitive, the back-end architecture was scalable and secure, and the integration capabilities exceeded anything I'd built before. We need to start showing this to potential customers, Jessica said, after I walked her through the complete system demo. I've been having conversations with business owners for months, but now we can actually show them what we've built. That's when things started feeling different. Jessica scheduled our first client presentation for the following week. It was with Marcus Rodriguez, who owned a small chain of auto repair shops around Denver. I'd spent hours preparing for the meeting, creating custom demo scenarios using data that matched his specific business model. Actually, Jessica said the night before the presentation, I think it might be better if I handled this one solo.
Marcus is someone I've been building a relationship with for months through my agency work. He's more comfortable with me, and I understand his business needs really well. I felt a small knot form in my stomach. But don't you think he'd want to meet the person who actually built the system? What if he has technical questions? Oh, he's not a technical guy at all. He just wants to see results, not understand how the engine works under the hood. Trust me, I can handle any questions that come up. The knot tightened, but I forced myself to nod. Jessica did understand sales and client relationships better than I did. Maybe she was right that my presence would just complicate things. The next day, she came back from the meeting practically glowing. "Sarah, it went even better than I hoped. Marcus is ready to sign a contract for 3 locations. He wants to start implementation next month." I should have been thrilled, but something felt off. What kind of questions did he ask? Did he want to know about security protocols or data backup systems? He asked about all that stuff, and I explained how robust our architecture is, how we've thought through every potential issue. He was really impressed with the technical sophistication. "You explained our architecture?" Jessica's smile flickered for just a moment. "I mean, I explained what you taught me about it. Obviously, I credited you as the developer. He knows this is a team effort."
But when I asked to see the contract Marcus had signed, Jessica said it was still being finalized by his lawyers. When I suggested setting up a technical call with Marcus to discuss implementation details, she said he preferred to work through her as the primary point of contact. 2 weeks later, she landed our second client, then our third. Each time, she'd come back with glowing reports of successful presentations and signed contracts, but I never actually spoke to any of the customers directly. "I think we should set up a proper office space," Jessica said one evening as I was debugging a payment processing integration. "We're growing fast enough that working out of your basement isn't really sustainable anymore." I looked around at my setup. 6 monitors, 3 servers humming quietly in the corner, walls covered with network diagrams and feature specifications. This seems to be working fine, and it's free. But what about when we need to hire additional developers? What about client meetings? We need a professional space that reflects the quality of what we're building. She had already found a small office space in downtown Denver, she explained. 2 rooms, modern furnishings, fast internet, and a conference room for client presentations. The lease would cost us $3,200 per month, but she'd run the numbers and determined we could afford it based on our current client contracts. "I'll handle the lease paperwork and get everything set up," she said. "You just focus on development. We can move your equipment over this weekend." Something about the speed of this decision bothered me, but I couldn't articulate why. Jessica was right that we needed a more professional setup as we scaled up, and she was handling all the business operations perfectly, leaving me free to focus on what I did best. The new office was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Denver, sleek modern furniture, and a tech setup that was actually superior to what I had in my basement. Jessica had even had business cards printed. Streamline Core, Integrated Business Solutions. Mine read, Sarah Mitchell, lead developer. Hers read, Jessica Mitchell, founder and CEO. "Founder and CEO?" I asked, holding up the card. "Well, someone needs to be the official company representative for legal and banking purposes, and since I'm handling all the business operations, it made sense for me to take the CEO title, but you're the lead developer, which is equally important." "What about the co-founder? I thought we agreed we were equal partners."
That's just semantics for the business cards. Legally, we're still 50-50 partners. The titles are just for external purposes. But when I looked at the articles of incorporation she'd filed, I discovered that Streamline Core was structured as a sole proprietorship with Jessica as the owner. My name appeared nowhere in the official business registration. "This is just temporary," she explained when I confronted her about it. "Setting up a proper partnership requires more complex legal paperwork, and I wanted to get us operational quickly. We can restructure later once we have more revenue and can afford better legal advice." I wanted to trust her explanation, but doubt was creeping in like water through a cracked foundation. Every interaction we had seemed to involve Jessica making unilateral decisions about our company while assuring me that the details weren't important. The turning point came when I overheard a phone call she was having with a potential investor. I'd come into the office early to work on a particularly complex integration problem, and Jessica was in the conference room with the door closed, speaking in the confident tone she used for important business conversations. "The platform is entirely proprietary," she was saying. "I designed the architecture from the ground up to solve integration problems that no one else in the market has addressed effectively." I stood frozen outside the conference room door, listening to my sister describe my work as her own innovation. The technical challenges were significant, but I have a strong background in computer science coursework from my computer science coursework. It took about 8 months of intensive development, but the result is something truly revolutionary. My sister had never taken a computer science course in her life. She'd barely passed college algebra. I do have a developer on my team who helps with implementation, but the core intellectual property and system design are mine. I'm the technical founder. My hands started shaking. I walked back to my desk and sat down, trying to process what I'd just heard. This wasn't a misunderstanding or miscommunication. This was deliberate theft. I spent the rest of that day going through every document, every contract, every piece of official paperwork Jessica had prepared. The pattern was clear and consistent. In every external communication, every client proposal, every legal filing, I was listed as an employee or contractor. Jessica was listed as the founder, the inventor, the technical architect. She'd been systematically erasing me from my own creation. That evening, I confronted her directly. "Jessica, I heard your call with the investor today." Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, that. Look, I know how that sounded, but investors want to hear confidence. They want to know that the founder has deep technical knowledge." "You told him you designed the architecture. You said you were the technical founder." "I had to simplify things for the pitch. Explaining the partnership structure would have just confused the messaging." "The partnership structure that doesn't exist because you filed the company as a sole proprietorship." Jessica's expression hardened. "Sarah, you're being paranoid. You know how much I value your contributions, but someone has to be the face of this company, and I'm better suited for that role." "The face of the company that I built. That we built together. But let's be honest here. I identified the market opportunity, I developed the business strategy, I landed the clients. You implemented my vision, which was crucial, but implementation isn't the same as innovation." I stared at her, feeling like I was seeing my sister clearly for the first time in my life. This wasn't a mistake or a miscommunication. This was exactly what she'd planned from the beginning. "I want to see all the contracts with our clients." "That's not necessary. I'm handling the business side." "I want to see them tonight or I'm pulling my code from the platform." Jessica's mask finally slipped completely. "You can't do that. We have legal obligations to our customers." "We? According to your paperwork, you have legal obligations. I'm just an employee, remember?" For the first time since I'd known her, Jessica had no quick response, no charming deflection, no way to spin the situation in her favor. We stared at each other across the office she'd chosen, furnished with money from contracts she'd signed in a company she'd legally registered under her name alone. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll send you copies of everything tonight."
But when I checked my email the next morning, there was nothing. And when I called her phone, it went straight to voicemail. The office key card she'd given me no longer worked. Standing in the parking garage beneath the office building at 7 in the morning, staring at a key card that no longer worked, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Not anger, not sadness, but a kind of hollow disbelief that made the world feel slightly unreal. I drove to Jessica's apartment building and waited in the lobby until the doorman called up to announce my arrival. 20 minutes later, he came back with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, miss. Ms. Mitchell says she's not available and asks that you schedule an appointment through her office." Her office. The office that contained my servers, my code, 8 months of my life's work, and apparently belonged entirely to her? I went home and spent the day trying to piece together what had actually happened.
I had backup copies of my source code on a personal drive, but I've been developing directly on the office servers for the past 2 months. The most recent versions of everything were locked behind Jessica's keycard system. More importantly, I had no legal standing to claim ownership of anything. I'd never insisted on a partnership agreement. I'd never filed any patents or copyrights. I trusted my sister to handle the business paperwork while I focused on building, and she'd used that trust to construct a legal structure where I simply didn't exist. By evening, I'd made a decision. I was going to go to our parents and explain exactly what Jessica had done. They might not understand the technical details, but they'd understand theft. They'd raised us to be honest, to treat each other fairly. They'd make Jessica do the right thing. I drove to their house in Littleton, the same house where Jessica and I had grown up, where she'd borrowed my homework and I'd fixed her computer problems, the same house where our parents had always assumed Jessica would be the successful one because she knew how to sell herself. They were in the living room watching the evening news when I knocked. Mom opened the door with a surprised smile. "Sarah, what a nice surprise! Jessica didn't mention you were coming over." "Actually, I need to talk to you both about Jessica. Something's happened." Dad muted the television and they both settled onto the couch with the concerned expressions they'd worn when I was in middle school and came home upset about something. I explained everything: the partnership proposal, the months of development work, the gradual realization that Jessica was positioning herself as the sole founder, the conversation I'd overheard with the investor. I showed them printouts of the business registration documents, the articles of incorporation where my name appeared nowhere. When I finished, the room was quiet except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. "Well," Mom said finally, "there's probably just been some miscommunication. Jessica has always been so organized with paperwork. I'm sure if you talk to her calmly, you can work this out." "Mom, she had my key card deactivated. She won't take my calls. She told an investor that she designed and built everything herself." "Maybe she was just trying to simplify things for the presentation. You know how complicated business negotiations can be." I stared at them, feeling the same disorientation I'd experienced in the parking garage. "She stole my work and filed a company under her name only. How is that a miscommunication?" "Now, don't be dramatic," Mom said. "Jessica has been planning this business for months. She showed us all her research and planning documents back in February. Because I was building what she designed. The software doesn't exist without me." Dad leaned forward with the patient expression he'd used when he thought I was being unreasonable. "Sarah, you're very talented with computers, but Jessica has the business education and experience to actually run a company. Maybe she's trying to structure things in a way that plays to both your strengths." By removing me entirely from legal ownership? "Jessica said you'd have equity once the company gets more established. She said you were worried about the financial risk of being an official partner right now." I felt like I was falling through the floor. "When did she tell you that?" "She stopped by Tuesday night. She was concerned about you, actually. She said you'd been acting paranoid and suspicious about normal business operations." Tuesday night, the same day I'd confronted her about the investor call.
She said you were having trouble adjusting to working in a professional environment instead of your basement, Dad continued. That you were questioning decisions you didn't have the business background to understand. And she was worried you might do something rash that could jeopardize the relationships she's built with clients, Mom finished. There it was. Jessica had gotten to them first, planted her version of events, positioned me as the unstable technical employee who was causing problems for her legitimate business. They'd believed her completely, just like they always had. "You think I'm lying?" I asked.
We think you're upset and maybe not seeing the situation clearly, Mom said gently. Jessica has always looked out for you. Remember how she helped you with your college applications? How she introduced you to people at her office when you were looking for clients? She's trying to help you transition from being a freelancer to being part of a real company, Dad added. That's a big change, and it's natural to feel some anxiety about it. I pulled out my laptop and opened the source code files I'd backed up. Look at this. Look at the timestamps on these files. Look at the commit history showing 8 months of development work done from my computer, on my home network. Dad squinted at the screen politely, but I could tell he wasn't processing any of it. Honey, I don't understand computer programming, but I know Jessica, and I know she wouldn't take advantage of you. She's done it our entire lives. Every school project we worked on together, every time I helped her with something technical, she took credit. That's not taking credit, Mom said, her voice getting sharper. That's collaboration. That's what families do. They help each other succeed. And Jessica has always been generous about acknowledging your help. She tells everyone how smart you are, how talented you are with technology, while positioning herself as the founder of the company I built. Mom stood up, clearly losing patience with the conversation. Sarah, I think you need to take some time to calm down and think about this situation rationally. Jessica is offering you an opportunity to be part of something bigger than your little freelance business. Your little freelance business? The phrase hit me like a physical blow. Even now, even after I'd explained exactly what I'd built and what Jessica had stolen, they saw my work as a hobby that Jessica was graciously trying to incorporate into her real business. Maybe you should go home and sleep on this. Things will look different in the morning. And maybe give Jessica a call tomorrow and apologize for how you reacted. She was really upset when she talked to us. I closed my laptop and walked toward the door. What if I'm right? What if Jessica really did steal my work and cut me out of my own company? Mom and Dad exchanged a look that said everything I needed to know. They weren't even considering that possibility. Jessica was the successful one, the business-minded one, the one who had always been destined for big things. I was the technical support, the helper, the one who should be grateful for the opportunity to be included in Jessica's vision. Jessica loves you, Mom said as I reached the door. She's not perfect, but she's not malicious. Work with her, not against her. I drove home through neighborhoods where porch lights were coming on and families were settling in for the evening. Normal families where parents might actually listen when one daughter accused another of theft. Where technical skills might be valued as highly as social ones. Where someone might ask to see actual evidence before choosing sides. Back in my apartment, I sat at my kitchen table and tried to understand my situation clearly. I had no legal ownership of Streamline Core. I had no access to the servers where the most current version of the software lived. I had no relationship with the clients who were paying for my work. I had no support from my family, who'd already been convinced that I was the problem. Jessica had systematically isolated me from every aspect of the company I built. She controlled the legal structure, the customer relationships, the physical infrastructure, and even the narrative about what had happened. I wasn't just locked out. I'd been erased so completely that my own parents couldn't imagine I'd ever been essential to the company's creation. But sitting there in my empty apartment, surrounded by the computing equipment I'd accumulated over years of freelance work that I'd treated as just a hobby, I realized something Jessica had overlooked in her carefully orchestrated takeover. She might have stolen my software, but she didn't understand how it worked. She might have convinced everyone she was the technical founder, but she couldn't actually code. She might control Streamline Core legally, but she was about to discover that running a software company required more than charm and business cards. And I was about to discover just how much money I'd been quietly accumulating in my business accounts over the years of freelance work I'd treated as just a hobby.
Jessica thought she'd destroyed me by taking away the thing I'd built, but she'd actually just freed me to build something bigger, something that would belong to me completely, with legal protections she couldn't circumvent and technical capabilities she couldn't replicate. She'd also made one crucial mistake in her systematic theft. She'd left me angry, motivated, and completely underestimated. I opened my laptop and started researching business acquisition strategies, hostile takeover procedures, and the market value of small software companies. If Jessica wanted to play business games, I was about to show her what happened when someone with real technical skills decided to learn the rules of her world. The war Jessica had started by stealing my work was about to become a much larger conflict than she'd ever imagined. And I was no longer going to be fighting it as the overlooked little sister who just wanted her fair share. I was going to be fighting it as a competitor, with enough money to buy her entire operation and enough technical knowledge to expose every lie she'd built her reputation on. Jessica had taught me that family loyalty was a weakness that could be exploited. Now I was going to teach her what happened when someone stopped being loyal and started being strategic. The first thing I did was hire a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Catherine Chen, a specialist in intellectual property and corporate acquisition law who had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when her clients had been wronged. Her office was in downtown Denver, 43 floors up in a glass tower that made Jessica's little rented space look like a coffee shop. "Tell me everything," Catherine said, settling behind a desk that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Don't leave out any details, no matter how small they seem." I walked her through the entire timeline, from Jessica's initial partnership proposal to the key card that no longer worked. Catherine took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking pointed questions about dates, witnesses, or documentation. "Do you have copies of your source code with timestamps?" she asked. "Everything. 8 months of development logs, commit histories, even video recordings I made while testing different features." "What about the market research and business planning Jessica showed you initially?" "That's the interesting part. I think most of it was legitimate. Jessica actually did identify a real market opportunity and develop a solid business strategy. But she always intended to cut me out once I'd built what she needed." Catherine nodded grimly. "Classic tech theft pattern. Use someone else's expertise to validate the concept, then claim ownership once the heavy lifting is done." She leaned back in her chair. "The good news is you have strong grounds for an intellectual property lawsuit. The bad news is litigation could take years and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars." "What if I don't want to sue her?" "What do you want to do?" I'd been thinking about this question for 3 sleepless nights. "I want to buy her company." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Jessica stole my software, but she doesn't actually understand how it works. She's going to run into technical problems she can't solve, scalability issues she can't address, customer demands she can't meet. Streamline Core is going to start failing, and when it does, I want to be positioned to acquire it. And then I expose exactly what she did, reclaim my intellectual property, and rebuild the company the right way." Catherine was quiet for a long moment, studying me with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades reading people's motivations. "That's not revenge," she said finally. "That's justice with a business plan. I like it." Over the next 2 weeks, Catherine helped me set up a proper corporate structure for my own software company. We called it Integratech Solutions, and this time, every piece of paperwork was bulletproof. I was the sole founder, owner, and technical director. All intellectual property belonged to the company, which belonged entirely to me. But the real revelation came when Catherine had me compile a complete financial statement. I'd been freelancing for 6 years, living modestly and automatically depositing most of my earnings into savings accounts I rarely checked. When we added everything up, including some cryptocurrency investments I'd made and forgotten about, I had just over $1.2 million in liquid assets. "Jesus," Catherine said, staring at the numbers. "You've been sitting on enough capital to fund a serious software startup." I never really thought about it as startup money. It was just savings. "Sarah, this changes everything.
You're not just someone who got ripped off by their sister. You're an entrepreneur with significant resources and proven technical capabilities. We can use this.
The plan we developed was elegantly simple. While Jessica struggled to maintain the software I'd built without understanding how it worked, I would build a competing platform that was superior in every way. I'd use my industry contacts to quietly recruit some of Streamline Core's clients, and when Jessica's company inevitably started failing, I'd make an acquisition offer she couldn't refuse. The key, Catherine explained, is patience. Don't rush this. Let her fail naturally, then swoop in as the solution to her problems. I rented office space in the same building where I'd originally freelanced, 3 floors up from my old co-working space. This time, I wasn't hiding in a basement. I had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Front Range, high-end development equipment, and a proper conference room for client meetings. Building Integratech's platform took me 6 weeks. Without Jessica's constant interruptions and business meetings, I could focus entirely on code. The new system was faster, more secure, and included advanced features that Streamline Core couldn't match. Machine learning algorithms for predictive analytics, real-time data visualization, automated workflow optimization, everything I'd wanted to build but hadn't had time for while developing Jessica's version. More importantly, this version belonged to me completely. Every line of code was documented, copyrighted, and legally protected. While I was building, Catherine was gathering intelligence on Streamline Core's operations. Corporate filings were public record, and Jessica hadn't been particularly careful about hiding her business activities. She's burning through capital faster than she's generating revenue, Catherine reported during one of our weekly meetings. The office lease, equipment costs, and what looks like a pretty generous salary she's paying herself. Meanwhile, client acquisition has stalled completely. What about the clients she already had? That's where it gets interesting. Marcus Rodriguez canceled his contract last month. So did 2 of the other early clients. From what I can gather, they're having technical problems Jessica can't resolve. I wasn't surprised. The Streamline Core platform I'd built was functional, but it required ongoing technical maintenance and updates. Without someone who understood the underlying architecture, even small problems would compound into major failures. She's posted 3 different job listings for senior developers, but based on the salary ranges she's offering, she's not going to attract anyone with the expertise needed to maintain your code base. By month 3, I was ready to start recruiting clients, but I wasn't going to poach Jessica's customers directly. Instead, I was going to demonstrate what a properly built business integration platform could actually accomplish. I reached out to Angela Foster, who ran a small chain of organic grocery stores. I'd done some freelance work for her 2 years earlier, building a simple inventory tracking system. Now I offered to upgrade her entire operation at no cost just to showcase Integratech's capabilities. "Sarah, this is incredible," Angela said after I'd spent a week implementing the new platform across her 3 stores. "The real-time analytics alone are saving me hours of manual calculation every day." What would something like this normally cost? I quoted her a price that was 30% lower than what Jessica was charging for inferior functionality. Angela signed a contract on the spot and agreed to serve as a reference for other potential clients. Word spread quickly in Denver's small business community. The organic grocery stores led to a contract with a local restaurant group. The restaurant group recommended me to a boutique hotel chain. Within 2 months, Integratech had 8 clients and a waiting list. Meanwhile, Catherine's intelligence gathering revealed that Streamline Core was imploding. Jessica had lost 5 of her original 7 clients. The 2 remaining customers were threatening to cancel unless she resolved persistent software bugs. She'd burned through most of her initial capital and was behind on rent for the office space. "She's been trying to find investors," Catherine reported, "but she can't demonstrate the platform effectively because she doesn't understand how it works, and potential investors are asking technical questions she can't answer." The final piece of information Catherine uncovered was the most revealing.
Jessica had reached out to 3 different software development firms, trying to find someone who could reverse engineer the Streamline core platform and fix its problems. She's essentially admitting she didn't build it herself. No legitimate founder would need to hire someone to figure out how their own software works. That's when we knew it was time to make our move. Catherine arranged a meeting with Jessica through a third-party business broker, presenting Integratech as a potential acquirer interested in Streamline Core's innovative approach to business integration software. Jessica didn't know I was involved. The meeting request came through Catherine's law firm and listed me only as the technical founder of a competing platform.
She agreed to the meeting immediately, Catherine told me. She's desperate enough that she'll consider any offer. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at Catherine's office. Jessica would come thinking she was negotiating with potential buyers who might save her failing company. Instead, she was going to discover that the little sister she'd stolen from and discarded had spent the last 6 months building a superior platform, accumulating a client base, and positioning herself to buy Streamline Core for a fraction of what it should have been worth. But, more importantly, she was going to learn that I had documented evidence of exactly how she'd stolen my intellectual property, and I was prepared to use that evidence to destroy her reputation in Denver's business community if she didn't cooperate completely. The war Jessica had started by betraying my trust was about to end with her signing ownership of her company over to me. And this time, every signature would be legal, binding, and absolutely unbreakable. Jessica thought she'd won by stealing my work and erasing my contributions. She was about to discover that she'd actually just provided me with the motivation and evidence I needed to destroy her completely. The meeting was set for Tuesday at 2 p.m. I spent the weekend preparing not for a negotiation, but for the most satisfying business presentation of my life. Tuesday arrived with the kind of crisp October morning that makes Denver feel like the most beautiful city in the world. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror at 6 a.m., choosing my outfit with the same precision I used to debug complex algorithms. Black blazer, white blouse, dark jeans, professional but not trying too hard. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a successful software entrepreneur who'd built something real. Catherine had arranged the conference room on the 43rd floor to maximize psychological impact. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Rocky Mountains in the distance, while the polished mahogany table reflected the city skyline below. She'd positioned the chairs so that Jessica would have to sit with her back to the windows, squinting into the light, while I would be clearly visible across from her. "Remember," Catherine said as we reviewed our strategy one final time, "let her talk first. Let her explain Streamline Core's value proposition. Give her enough rope to hang herself with her own lies." I arrived at 1:45 p.m. and took my seat facing the door. Catherine sat to my right, a stack of legal documents positioned prominently in front of her. At exactly 2 p.m., Jessica walked into the room. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, more carefully styled, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was shorter, professionally colored, and she carried herself with the artificial confidence of someone who'd been practicing power poses in the mirror. But when she saw me sitting at the conference table, every mask she'd carefully constructed cracked simultaneously. "What is she doing here?" Jessica asked Catherine, ignoring me completely. "Ms. Mitchell, please take a seat. Sarah is the technical founder of Integratech Solutions, the company interested in acquiring Streamline Core." Jessica remained standing, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and what looked like genuine panic. "This is some kind of joke." "I assure you, it's not. Please, sit down so we can discuss the terms of the acquisition." Jessica reluctantly took the chair across from me, but she kept her eyes fixed on Catherine. "I agreed to meet with potential acquirers for my company. I didn't agree to whatever game this is." "There's no game," I said quietly. Integratech Solutions is a legitimate software company with 8 current clients and revenue of approximately $180,000 per quarter. We're interested in acquiring Streamline Core's client contracts and intellectual property." "Your intellectual property," Jessica said, her voice drooping with disdain. "You can't steal my company just because you're angry about being let go." Catherine opened the folder in front of her and pulled out a thick stack of papers.
source code printouts with timestamps dating back 8 months, video recordings of me explaining technical concepts and demonstrating features, email logs showing my communications with potential clients before Streamline Core was even registered as a business. These are development logs from Sarah's personal servers, showing the complete evolution of the software platform you've been marketing as your own creation. Jessica's face went pale, but she tried to maintain her composure. Sarah was working for me, as a contractor. Any work she did belongs to Streamline Core. Under what contract? Catherine asked, because according to our research, no employment agreement was ever signed between Sarah and Streamline Core, no work for hire agreement, no intellectual property assignment, nothing. We had a verbal agreement about a partnership, which you violated when you filed the company registration under your name only. Catherine pulled out another set of documents. We also have recordings of your conversations with investors where you explicitly claim to have designed and built the platform yourself. Would you like to hear them?
She pressed play on a small digital recorder. Jessica's voice filled the room, confident and clear. The platform is entirely proprietary. I designed the architecture from the ground up to solve integration problems that no one else in the market has addressed effectively. Jessica's hands started shaking. That was just marketing language. Investors want to hear confidence. You also told them you had a strong background in systems design from your computer science coursework, Catherine continued. But according to your college transcripts, you never took a single computer science class. The transcripts were spread across the table now, showing Jessica's business administration degree with its complete absence of technical coursework. Next to them were my transcripts from Colorado School of Mines, showing 4 years of advanced computer science, mathematics, and engineering courses. This is harassment, Jessica said, but her voice was barely a whisper. No, Catherine replied, this is due diligence. Integratech Solutions needs to understand exactly what intellectual property Streamline Core owns before we can make an acquisition offer. I leaned forward, speaking directly to Jessica for the first time. The question is simple. Can you demonstrate how the Streamline Core platform works? Can you explain the database architecture? Can you modify the code to add new features or fix bugs? Jessica stared at me without answering. Because your former clients have been calling Integratech. Marcus Rodriguez, Angela Chen, David Torres, they all have the same story. Streamline Core's platform started failing after the first few months, and you couldn't fix the problems. That's not, the software works fine. Does it? Catherine pulled out her laptop and connected it to the room's presentation screen. We took the liberty of examining Streamline Core's current platform. Sarah was able to access it using administrative credentials that were never changed after you locked her out. The screen is filled with error logs, failed processes, and system crashes, hundreds of them, dating back months. The platform I'd built was indeed failing, exactly as I'd predicted, because Jessica had no idea how to maintain it. Your remaining clients are threatening legal action for breach of contract. You're 3 months behind on your office lease, and according to bank records we obtained through discovery, Streamline Core has less than $8,000 in operating capital. How did you get bank records? Jessica asked. We filed a preliminary intellectual property claim. Once we demonstrated probable cause that Streamline Core was built on stolen IP, we were granted access to relevant financial documents. Jessica looked like she was about to be sick. You can't just destroy my company because you're jealous. I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm offering to buy it. Catherine slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Integratech Solutions is prepared to acquire Streamline Core for $15,000. That's enough to cover your outstanding debts and lease obligations. $15,000? This company's worth 10 times that. Based on what? I asked. You have no clients, no revenue, no intellectual property you can legally defend, and no technical capability to maintain the platform. What exactly are we buying besides your debt? Jessica stared at the acquisition offer, her hands trembling as she read the terms. This is extortion. This is business, Catherine said. You have 2 options. Accept the acquisition offer, which includes a non-disclosure agreement that prevents either party from discussing the circumstances of the sale,
or reject it, and we'll proceed with the intellectual property lawsuit that will make everything we've discussed today part of the public record. What intellectual property lawsuit? Catherine opened another folder and pulled out a formal legal filing. Sarah versus Streamline Core LLC and Jessica Mitchell, claiming theft of trade secrets, copyright infringement, and fraudulent business practices. We're seeking damages of $2.3 million plus legal fees. You can't prove I stole anything. We have 8 months of development logs showing Sarah created every component of the platform you've been selling. We have recordings of you claiming credit for her work. We have testimony from your former clients about technical problems you couldn't solve. We have your college transcripts proving you lack the qualifications to have built what you claim to have invented.
Catherine leaned back in her chair. Jessica, you committed intellectual property theft on a scale that will destroy your professional reputation permanently. The acquisition offer lets you walk away with enough money to pay your debts and start over somewhere else. The lawsuit will leave you bankrupt and unemployable. Jessica was crying now, though she was trying to hide it. She's my sister. We worked on this together. No, I said firmly. You identified a market opportunity and convinced me to build your solution for free. Then you stole my work and tried to erase me completely. That's not a collaboration. That's fraud. I never meant for it to go this far. You absolutely did. You planned this from the beginning. The sole proprietorship filing, the investor presentations, the key card deactivation, none of that was accidental. Catherine pushed the acquisition agreement closer to Jessica. You have until 5 p.m. today to sign this, or we will file the lawsuit tomorrow morning. Jessica picked up the pen with shaking hands. What about my reputation? What about my career? The non-disclosure agreement protects both parties, Catherine said. As long as you don't violate its terms, no one will know the details of why you're selling Streamline Core. And if I sign this, what happens to the company? Integratech will honor the existing client contracts under our superior platform, I said. The Streamline Core brand will be discontinued, and all intellectual property will be properly attributed to its actual creator. Jessica stared at the document for a long moment. You planned this whole thing, didn't you? The new company? The client recruitment? This meeting? You've been plotting revenge for months. I've been building a legitimate business, I replied. The fact that it happens to expose your fraud is just a bonus. She signed the papers at 4:47 p.m. Catherine immediately filed the transfer documents with the state, making Integratech Solutions the legal owner of Streamline Core's assets, contracts, and liabilities. Jessica walked out of the conference room without saying goodbye, clutching a check for $15,000 and a copy of the non-disclosure agreement that would keep her quiet about everything that had transpired. After she left, Catherine and I sat in the empty conference room watching the sun set over the mountains. How does it feel? She asked. Honestly, anticlimactic. I thought I'd feel more satisfied. That's normal. Revenge fantasies are always more dramatic than the reality. But you accomplished something more important than revenge. You protected your intellectual property, built a successful business, and prevented Jessica from stealing from anyone else. She was right. This hadn't been about destroying Jessica. It had been about reclaiming what was mine and ensuring it couldn't happen again. What's next? Catherine asked. I looked at the acquisition documents, officially making me the owner of both Integratech Solutions and the remnants of Streamline Core. Next, I will rebuild the company the right way, with proper legal protections, ethical business practices, and my name on everything I create. And Jessica? Jessica's not my problem anymore. She has enough money to start over, and she's learned a very expensive lesson about intellectual property theft. What she does with that knowledge is up to her. Catherine gathered the papers and closed her briefcase. For what it's worth, I think you handled this perfectly. You could have destroyed her completely, but you chose justice over revenge. As I drove home that evening, I realized Catherine was right. I'd won not by becoming like Jessica, but by being better than her. I'd built something legitimate,
protected it legally, and used the system correctly to reclaim what was mine. Jessica had taught me that family loyalty could be weaponized against you, but I'd learned something more valuable, that technical excellence combined with proper business practices was more powerful than charm and deception. The war was over, and I'd won it by refusing to fight on Jessica's terms. 6 months after the acquisition, Integratech Solutions had grown from 8 clients to 43. The former Streamline core customers who'd been struggling with a deteriorating platform were now thriving on the rebuilt system. Marcus Rodriguez's auto repair shops were processing 30% more customers with the same staff. Angela Foster had expanded her organic grocery chain to 5 locations using the predictive analytics I'd built into her inventory system. But the real transformation wasn't in the business metrics. It was in how I moved through the world.
I was sitting in my new office, a full floor in a downtown Denver high-rise with 20-foot ceilings and a view of both the mountains and the city, when my assistant knocked on the open door. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." I looked up from the code review I was conducting with my lead developer, expecting to see Catherine or maybe one of my college friends. Instead, my father stood in the doorway, looking smaller and older than I remembered. "Hi, Dad." "Sarah, your office is impressive." He walked slowly around the space, taking in the multiple monitors displaying real-time client data, the whiteboard covered with system architecture diagrams, the shelf lined with industry awards Integratech had won in the past 6 months. His eyes lingered on the framed article from Colorado Business Journal with my photo under the headline, "Denver's Rising Tech Star." "I came to apologize," he said, finally. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "For what, specifically?" He sat down heavily, his hands folded in his lap like a child called to the principal's office. "For not believing you, for not listening when you tried to tell us what Jessica had done. What changed your mind?" "Jessica came to see us last month. She was different, angry, bitter. She told us the whole story about how you'd sabotaged her company and stolen her clients." He paused, studying my face. But the way she told it didn't make sense. She kept contradicting herself, getting defensive when we asked simple questions. I waited, not making it easier for him. "Then your mother and I did some research. We looked up your company, read about your success. We talked to some business owners who use your software. Everyone said the same thing, that you'd built something revolutionary, that you clearly understood the technology better than anyone else in the market." And we realized that we'd been wrong about you for a very long time. We saw Jessica's confidence and assumed it meant competence. We saw your quiet focus and assumed it meant you were less capable. He met my eyes for the first time since entering the office. We were wrong about what success looks like. The apology I'd imagined receiving for months felt hollow now that it was actually happening. Not because it wasn't sincere, but because I no longer needed it. The validation I'd once craved for my parents had been replaced by something more solid, the respect of my peers, the loyalty of my clients, and the knowledge that I'd built something meaningful entirely on my own terms. "Thank you for saying that, but you should know that I'm not the same person who needed your approval anymore." Dad nodded slowly. "I can see that. The question is there room in your life for a family that's learned to see you clearly?" Before I could answer, my assistant appeared in the doorway again. "Sarah, your 3 o'clock is here, the reporter from TechCrunch. Send him in." Dad started to stand. "I should go. I don't want to interrupt your work." "Actually, stay. You might find this interesting." James Morrison from TechCrunch was younger than I'd expected, probably fresh out of journalism school with the eager energy of someone who'd landed a bigger story than usual. He set up a recording device on my desk and pulled out a notebook covered in barely legible scrawl. "So Integratech Solutions has become one of the fastest growing B2B software companies in Colorado. What do you attribute that success to?" "Building something that actually solves real problems. Too many tech companies focus on flashy features or buzzword compliance. We focus on making our clients' operations more efficient and profitable." "You started the company less than a year ago, but you have extensive experience in software development. Where did you work before this?" "I was freelancing, building custom solutions for small businesses. I saw a gap in the market for integrated platforms that could scale with growing companies." "What about your educational background? You studied at Colorado School of Mines?"
Computer science and applied mathematics. The program there is incredibly rigorous. They don't just teach you to code, they teach you to think systematically about complex problems.
James took notes frantically, occasionally glancing at my father, who was listening with an expression I'd never seen before. Not confusion or polite disinterest, but genuine fascination.
What's next for Integratech? James asked. We're developing an AI-powered module that can predict market trends specific to each client's industry. It uses machine learning algorithms to analyze purchasing patterns, seasonal variations, and economic indicators to help business owners make more strategic decisions. That sounds incredibly complex. It is, but that's what makes it valuable. Anyone can build simple software. Creating something that actually enhances human decision-making requires deep technical expertise and real understanding of how businesses operate. After James left, my father and I sat in silence for a moment. I don't understand half of what you just explained, he said finally, but I could tell that he was impressed. Really impressed. The technology isn't the impressive part, I said. What's impressive is building something that helps people succeed. Is that what drives you? Helping people? I thought about Marcus Rodriguez, whose auto shops were now profitable enough that he was planning to open a fourth location. About Angela Foster, who'd been able to hire 12 new employees because her inventory optimization had freed up so much working capital. About the dozens of other business owners who'd told me that Integratech had changed how they thought about their operations. It drives me now, I said. It didn't used to. I used to be driven by wanting recognition, wanting to prove myself, but that's exhausting. Building something useful is more sustainable. What about Jessica? The question I'd been avoiding. What about her? Have you talked to her since the acquisition? No, and I don't plan to. She's struggling, Sarah. She moved to Phoenix, took a job at a small marketing firm. She's making less money than she did 5 years ago. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. She made her choices. She chose to steal my work instead of building her own skills. She chose to lie to investors instead of finding a technical co-founder. She chose to cut me out instead of honoring our partnership. People make mistakes. That wasn't a mistake, Dad. That was a systematic betrayal that she planned and executed over months. There's a difference. He was quiet for a long moment. She says you destroyed her life. I bought her company for more than it was worth and gave her enough money to start over somewhere else. I could have sued her for millions and made sure she never worked in business again. Instead, I chose the option that let her keep her reputation intact. So why won't you talk to her? Because I don't trust her, and I don't owe her forgiveness just because we shared DNA. The conversation with my father stayed with me for days, not because I felt guilty about my decision regarding Jessica, but because it highlighted how completely my relationship with my family had changed. They were no longer the primary source of validation or disappointment in my life. They were just people I happened to be related to, with their own opinions and emotions that didn't dictate my choices. 2 weeks later, I received an email that surprised me. It was from Dr. Patricia Williams, the dean of the computer science department at Colorado School of Mines. Sarah, I've been following Integratech's success with great interest. We're looking for accomplished alumni to speak at our annual career symposium. Would you be interested in giving a keynote address to our current students? I accepted immediately. Standing on the stage where I'd attended lectures as an undergraduate, looking out at an auditorium full of young programmers and engineers, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with revenge or family drama. 10 years ago, I was sitting where you are now, wondering if the late nights and difficult problem sets would actually lead to meaningful work. I'm here to tell you that they will, but probably not in the way you expect. I talked about the importance of building real solutions, not just impressive technology, about the value of understanding business operations, not just algorithms, about protecting your intellectual property and demanding fair compensation for your expertise.
But mostly, I talked about the difference between being smart and being effective. You can be the most brilliant programmer in the world, but if you can't communicate the value of what you've built, if you can't stand up for your ideas, if you can't navigate the business world that determines whether your code ever sees daylight, then your brilliance doesn't matter.
After the presentation, a young woman approached me during the reception. She reminded me of myself at that age, quiet, intense, brilliant, and completely unaware of how to translate her technical skills into professional success. "How do you deal with people who don't understand what you do?" she asked. "My family thinks programming is just a hobby. My boyfriend says I should focus on more people-oriented work." "You build something so undeniably valuable that their opinions become irrelevant," I said. "Don't try to convince them that your work matters. Show them by succeeding so completely that they have to acknowledge it." "What if they steal credit for what you build?" "Then you make sure you're the only one who can actually build it. Document everything, protect your intellectual property, and never hand over your work without legal guarantees." She nodded, taking notes on her phone. "Did someone steal credit from you?" "Once. But it taught me that technical brilliance without business awareness is vulnerability. Now I control both sides of every project I touch." Driving home from the university, I realized that Jessica had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible. By betraying my trust, she'd forced me to develop skills I never would have learned otherwise. Business strategy, legal protection, professional networking, public speaking, team management, all capabilities I'd acquired in response to her theft. The quiet programmer who'd trusted her sister to handle the business side of things was gone. In her place was someone who understood that technical excellence was just the foundation for building something lasting. Someone who could code, negotiate, present, hire, fire, and protect what she'd created. Jessica had tried to erase me from my own work. Instead, she'd taught me how to become impossible to erase. Integratech Solutions now employed 18 people, served clients across 3 states, and had been valued at $8.3 million in our latest funding round. More importantly, it belonged to me completely. Every line of code, every client relationship, every strategic decision. I'd started this journey wanting to reclaim my stolen work. I ended it by building something far bigger than what was taken. Something that could never be stolen because it existed in my mind, my relationships, and my reputation. Jessica could take credit for teaching me that lesson, but she'd never be able to take credit for anything else I build ever again.
Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.